Hi everyone. So, not sure if it works. Yes, in theory it should work. Let me see something. Hello? Hello, hello, hello. Let's see. Hello? Hello, hello, hello. This is probably a problem with your OBS. So, the thing is, the little parasite sounds, they still are here. And I believe this is because in the MIDI system of the no, because the this is not working. Maybe a gain thing. It's possible a gain thing. Let's see. Hello, hello. Now that must be the first in the list. No. This is not normal. Hello. Hello. I'm not doing the whole run of I'm not recording everything because of memory issues that we try to fix. Hello, hello. Okay, so basically, even with the Yeti, there are still some issues. I believe this is because the Mac is making some sound. I'll try maybe. Maybe by doing this. Hello, this is Rick Sanchez. Walla dub dub. Is it working? Hello, this is Rick Sanchez. Walla dub dub. Is it? Mm, it's too low. It's too low, but hello, hello, hello. Oh shit, didn't work. Hello. Hello. Hello, hello. That seems to work. Like this. Noise. This is basically I'm getting a lot of invitation. Noise. Okay, yes, that seems to work. So basically, if I speak like that, how does it work if I speak like this? How does it work? Noise. Hello. 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 If I speak like that, how does it work if I speak like this? How does it work? Yes, that should be okay. That should be okay. There's still a slight parasite sound, but it's okay. So here we go. I wanted to correct two things regarding yesterday's stream regarding the Beluga Sanctuary. One thing is, remember the main space. I'll make another stream. Well, when I'll be more confident in the way I speak and I will have a slightly better setup, I'll make another stream on the Beluga Sanctuary and probably make some kind of individual segment. Wait. I'll make an individual segment. The thing is, did you remember the little spaces that were that were divided from the bigger space? There are two things which are important, which I need to speak about. One is that one thing I didn't acknowledge that was mentioned by the people inside of the documentary, well, the short interview, is that they will, which is fucked, by the way, have those two belugas in this extremely minuscule space, as we've seen it on stream, or which is self-evident from they did themselves for a time before releasing them in the main space. This is fucked. It's fucked. They have nearly no space to move. If they want to separate from each other, how do they do? I guess that one is transferred in the neighboring area, but I mean, it's still an extremely small space. They can't properly dive. They can properly swim fast, they can hardly do anything. That's extremely tight and controlled space. How is this normal? It's technically even smaller than the space they had before. The problem is, how much time are they going to be in there? It's possible that they were already put in the other bigger space, but I have no evidence for this. So the other thing is, it is true that one could argue that those spaces are not dormitory spaces, that they're only used for a transitional area before being introduced to the bigger space. I don't believe that. The use of dormitory space is mandatory in the dolphin armor industry. It makes sense for medical and surveillance reasons. Wait, do you say surveillance or not? Monitoring. For supervision monitoring, okay. It's obvious for monitoring related reasons, especially when the whole rhetorics of the pro sanctuary, which is basically the same rhetoric than the pro cap side, is the same thing. The whole rhetoric of the pro sanctuary side is we need constant monitoring in case they may die, blah, blah. They may have some kind of condition, illness. What if they fuck up behaviorally, blah, blah, blah. So it's obvious that they're going to use that kind of hyper monitoring using tight control, space division, etc. That it under the logic of the dolphin armor industry, it makes sense. We will go over that because I want to be 100% confident. Well, I'm saying I'm pretty confident given the whole logic underlying the sanctuary logic, and because the whole sanctuary rhetorics, I mean, and because of how the dolphin armor industry already works, and not just the dolphin armor industry, because zoos and circuses already work that way, especially when it comes to ape and elephant management, but it's also how humans are managed in mental asylum institution, whatnot. But we will go over that in another stream. The second thing I wanted to say is that I found that let me just change something from OBS. I'm sorry, it's every time I stream, every research is a bit wonky and slow. And you know what? I'll put a bit of white loafing. Fuck that. It also marks stupid background noise that maybe I hope you don't hear like the road behind, stuff like that. I mean, I'm in a pretty calm neighborhood, but sometimes you can hear a motorcycle, some stuff like that. Yes, that article. I changed that. I don't like low fields. I like stuff like jazz and stuff, but so this thing can be used in theory to stillman the pro-sanctuary argument. I don't think so, but it can in theory be used against one of my main points against sanctuaries. I'll go over this, but the gist of it. Do you say gist or gist? I always pronounce gist, but it's like give, but oh, gist.
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 Okay, the gist of it is that one of the most powerful arguments against the whole pro-sanctuary or pro-cap shenanigans is that cetaceans are known to near systematically help each other. One of the arguments which tends to be used when it comes to a certain superficial assessment of non-human behavior is to say, well, when it comes, for instance, to crows or apes, they abandon each other when one of them is ill. Or even then, I'm not sure this is the case for apes. Even then, it tends to be argued. I'm not sure about the data behind that, but it's absolutely clear it is not the case of cetaceans. You have a lot of, we will go over the data in another stream, but you have a lot of cetaceans that are maimed, that are ill, that are dying, that are extremely old cetacean-wise, that for instance have the extremely lined off teeth, that lack teeth, that have certain deformations, deformation of the flippers, deformation of the snout, that have strong scoliosis, blah blah, whales, either baleen whales or even orcas, that lack a tail, that lack a dorsal or pectoral fins, that clearly live with other cetaceans, either from their groups or, as we've seen in some cases, of other cetacean species, on which were seen to be directly fed by other cetaceans, what they call non-hunt. This is extremely important because A, this is a strong argument when it comes to cetacean sapiency. B, it's not one or two anecdotal evidence. We've seen that dozen on dozen of times in many different cetacean groups from different species, across species, etc. And C, this is an extremely counter-argument against the pro-sanctuary side, because this means that normally free cetacean will help cetaceans in need. Now, obviously, you can try to analyze, okay, at what rate is this something that depends, culturally speaking, from group to group? Maybe it's not as systematic, blah, blah. Obviously, we can analyze this, but that kind of observation tends to stillman a more generous assessment of how cetaceans function toward other cetaceans. And it clearly doesn't go in the direction, for instance, I've heard of some people, sorry, I jumped from a sentence to another. I've heard some pro-sanctuaries argue that cetaceans, free cetaceans, may violently reject ex-captive cetaceans. I haven't seen, sorry, I ate peels from oranges I've eaten, that's disgusting, I don't care. So I've heard some pro-sanctuaries argue that, in particular when it comes to tour shops, that some ex-cetaceans reject free ex-captive cetaceans. I've seen no evidence for that, no. I'm extremely familiar with the literature when it comes to free cetaceans. None of it tends to show either cases of like free population downright violently attacking or rejecting ex-captives, or free cetaceans not accepting. In fact, we have a lot of cases of ex-captives being, including ex-captives from other places and whatnot, being accepted or integrated in groups, local groups of the same species. We go over that, but the gist of it is that the pro-sanctuary side doesn't appear to be stillman by the empirical data we have today. When it comes to that, so dolphins are among the probably. According to a new study, we'll go over that. We will save it. we won't go over this 2D right now. We'll just go over the, which I know it's but only the partial way of assessing it. Don't worry, we'll do this in another stream. So first, this is the Sarasota Bay. I don't know if it's the same population now for begging, but we know it may not be the case. But we know that the begging population in not in Tanganyika, in Monkey Mia, is weird when it comes to this overall behavior compared to other Tertius populations. It's not impossible this is also the case for this Sarasota population. So take that in account. I believe this is because they say they base 170 animals. So it may include the begging population or other non-begging populations. I have to take that in account. So first, this is human-caused injuries. This is important. So first, Greenfield found that while the injured dolphin returned the strongest bounce, important, so that means there is no total rejection, blah blah, it can be hard. So not only is between the mother and calf, but between males that had formed an alliance. This is important because this is one of the core aspects of, again, not all the Tertius populations, because I believe the Eastern Atlantic European populations don't have the same dynamics that the Western populations. So for instance, that's those customs of some Tertius males of trying to hurt females to have sex with, which it tends to be argued that it is a form of rape. It's more not exactly a form of rape per se, but at best you can say it is a form of sexual harassment, and even then it seems to take an extremely ritualized form. It's not as simple as that. This has a name in cytology, I forgot the name of that. This herding system with males at some point from certain alliances herding females against other alliances, you don't find this in the Eastern Atlantic, population from Moray Firth, the Isle of Saint, blah blah. This doesn't exist. So, but whatever. I mean by that, I believe the alien system exists, but it's not as defined as in the Western Atlantic population. But we will go over the literature. I don't exclude I could be wrong. The other association seems to be the case. So this already nuances the point. So we're still part of a group that was like, okay, so this already that doesn't go in the direction of, it could be bent in that way by procaps, prosanctuaries, but clearly it doesn't show. I'm aware of Randy Wallace, but superficially, I know he was involved in some studies on the mud. I don't know. I've heard of him, but I forgot what were his exact involvement when it comes to captivity and such. Okay, but yes, Bearsi, her name appears a lot when it comes to Turchop's behavior-related paper, like Dudzinski or Norris and whatnot. I'm curious, could it be like they can participate less to hunting trips and whatnot? I'm curious about this, about also what are the more informal bounds that are affected. Whatever, the gist of it, if you want to use it as a sledgehammer argument against a more radical, ungenerous assessment of cetacean liberation, it doesn't seem to go in that direction. So already this has to be nuanced. The point is, I wanted today to assess superficially, we will go over that in other streams. I'll just lower the Lofi because it's kind of annoying. I may change that, I don't know. I may be stricken, I don't believe so, but Other streamers don't do that. Hasanabi does sometimes use lo-fi. I use that just to mask stupid background sounds. And also because in English, I don't speak very quickly, so that may kind of fog the rhythm of how I speak. And I acknowledge that. I hope. No. Oh shit! So I wasn't. Sorry about that. So I wanted to assess the problem of personhood. I haven't read yet some relevant pieces of literature on the matter, notably the In Defense of Dolphins of Thomas White, which I already know I'm critical of, but maybe we'll go over some chapters on stream. I have the book in PDF, whatever. So, the gist of it, if you know my point, my main point is that an assessment of cetacean or elephant, ape, whatever, personhood is not enough because the key problem is not just personhood, it's property. Cetaceans, like any other human, non-human in the world, is understood under laws, custom, language, and such as basically property to be handled at will. There are laws that regulate that, but the idea that they're not even unconsciously understood as a form of property is laughable. It cannot be argued, it cannot easily be argued that it is not the case. But I thought that watching Make That, I wanted to do that thing. Because this could... I don't know who Chris Butler is, so we will just go over...
I was very envious of Claude having his iPad with him. I've got my...
Okay, I just want to see who Chris Butler is. Okay, so he's the chief executive of the Whale and Dolphin Conservation, which, as you may know, I have a particularly, let's say I don't like them particularly for reasons that have to do with their obvious collaboration with the dolphinarium industry when it comes to at least 3 sanctuary projects. They, as you may know from the stream of I made yesterday, that the Whale and Dolphin Conservation on some of their pundits like Marino and Visser and whatnot actively collaborate with Sea Life on Merlin Entertainment to create what basically are dolphinarium with extra steps where people have to pay money to see and effectively consume whale as a product, knowing that Merlin Entertainment is a subsidiary of Blackstone Group, which also owned SeaWorld. The idea that the dolphinarium industry at large doesn't have something to say on some kind of hold on the future development of cetacean sanctuaries is laughable. They obviously have. This is a common strategy that you see in the business world. For instance, if you know a bit about Marlboro, you know that Marlboro, the cigarette manufacturers, have possess and own some of the current industry and development of so-called electronic cigarettes. You know, the one that looks like robot dicks that are supposed to replace tobacco and be a safest alternative to that and so on. This is common business strategy. SeaWorld or whatnot work as businesses. This is normal. So what can I say? I mean, if you're a pro-sanctuary or a mainstream activist or you get literally cocked by the dolphinarium industry, what can I say? So sorry, my voice is of a particular nature. This is, before you ask, I have to make vocal or orthophonic exercises. This is basically a congenital condition I have due to all condition I have since a child. This is probably never totally leave. This is purely psychological. It doesn't have like, I don't have a nodule or anything, so I have to train my voice to speak in a less grainy on post-over fashion, or whatever.
1979 iPad with me. It's very good, even comes along with a stylus and everything. The reason I'm using this is, one, because it gives me confidence, but secondly, also, the first part of my talk, I'm going to talk about some philosophy.
Wait. Gee, time. Normally, you shouldn't be hearing any background noise, so this is the last time I will change setup. The last, for now, I am at some kind of mini vacations at my fault for finishing some document, text, etc. to focus, and then I will install the definite setup at my place. On there, hopefully, I think I will buy a better webcam and start the serious setting up and whatnot. These are more like proto streams to train myself how to speak, the technical aspect of the streaming. Hopefully, I will make one stream will be like seriously put into place. I will like make individual segments and whatnot, and we will see.
And as I'm not a natural philosopher, one of the things I've found is if I quote philosophers and I get them wrong, especially if they're still alive, there's a very strong chance they will name a paradigm after me, which is a highly negative one. So I'm going to be very careful, and I have to read a few things out. So forgive me for that, but it'll help us.
I don't know if he's still in charge of the WDC. I have no idea. Yeah. Logically he is, because it will not, his name wouldn't have appeared in the official WDC website, whatever.
As we go along. The other thing I have to say is, as Joanna just said, as scientists, the reality is most of the time we're doing things as best we can, but I have to say, after 20 years of working in the conservation of whales and dolphins, we've most probably been getting it.
Those are just anecdotal. Those dolphins are from the Moray Firth in Scotland. They're an important resident population, which is quite well studied in the cetological field. The WDC possesses some kind of biological and conservation station there, I'm not sure.
Wrong. So that's my first challenge to myself. The second is that the title of the talk...
Oh, sorry.
is rights for whales and dolphins necessity or exaggeration? Well, I actually think now, after 20 years, it's a necessity. You can decide whether it's an exaggeration. I'm going to try and cram about 5 hours of talk into the remaining 16 minutes or so, and you can judge at the end of it. The challenge, I said, was that I've spent 20 years talking to fishermen, to governments, trying to reduce bycatch by 2%, trying to end whaling or get whaling down by 50%. And we've talked about whale stocks.
This is important for other reasons. When they refer to whaling, obviously there is no whaling in UK proper. Although I know some limited form of whaling, which is poorly known even by activists, exist in some Caribbean island. I believe that in Santa Lucia, without. Let me check that because I don't want to be wrong on that. 1 minute. Yes, I know about this stupid background. This is an artifact of. This is really unfortunate. I will try to. I'm not using the webcam because the webcam is really shitty on. That's in Saint Vincent. That's it. Which is it an UK dependency or not? No, it's. Yep. No. No, it's independent, right? It's not a British dependency. Okay, it's an independent country. Okay, no, I had it out. So, just, I believe the WDC, I don't know what exactly is their campaigning, but my suspicion when they talk about whaling, it is mostly Norwegian and the Icelandic whaling, but whatever, this is, what he says, I have nothing to say about whatever he's saying right now, I mean.
Big populations of these creatures out there. And the thing I've realized is actually we're most probably talking at absolutely the wrong level. And the more we learn about these creatures, the more we realize that we have to talk about them as individuals. And I'll try and explain a few of those.
I mean, that's interesting though, because even for very, non-sentient species that cognitively speaking are not necessarily understood as sapient or proto-sapient or whatever. I mean, dogs are individuals, cats are individuals in the sense that they have individual behavior that set them up from other members of the species, preferences, specific quirks, etc. Like, even on that scale, I mean, for having done, which is paradoxical when I stopped that, but back in the day, I did a lot of aquariophilia, like fish keeping, not fishes, I specialized in shrimp keeping. Even in some species of shrimps on very simple invertebrates, you can see very specific form of individual where some don't act the same than others, some are more timid than others. Individuality doesn't seem to be the strongest factor when it comes to an assessment of cetacean sapiency or right in the narrowest sense of the term. I mean, it is a fundamental aspect, but that doesn't seem, whatever, this is a specific point, but
things as we go through.
It seems to be like a well-distributed trait when it comes to most vertebrates, some high-level invertebrates. I don't know if it's the best.
So first of all, I ought to say whales and dolphins, what are they? Well, they're mammals. They're like us. They have live young. They feed them milk. They're warm-blooded. I say that, but some people don't know that. Some people still think of them as fish, and I'll explain.
This is true, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons I tend to be a bit reluctant in speaking about the fact that I specialize kind of like in the whole dolphin shenanigan, because one of the first, people tend to be like, fishes, blah, blah. But even beyond that, it's terrible what I'm going to say, but 1/3 of the time when I say to people, oh yes, like what I study is dolphin intelligence, blah, blah, people make jokes about dolphins being rapists or whatever, so.
A little bit further in a moment. The history of our relationship with whales and dolphins also goes back a long way. If we go back to the Romans, there's...
This is why I will accelerate, because this is not very interesting.
Poet, the Opium of Sicilia, who talks about the gods looking down on the killing of dolphins like the same as the killing of humans. Aristotle in the Greeks talked about dolphins saving other dolphins. Even in the Arctic nations, say the Inuit in Greenland, they venerated Sedna as their goddess, and it was her fingers which fell into the water that became the whales and dolphins that then fed her. Even in China, Baiji, now a dolphin which is what's called...
the species that disappeared recently. No, so but when it comes to the Inuit myth, this is a big apartheid. We'll go over that. If you know my positions, you know that I am big into indigenous people rights, right to autonomy, their use of land, blah, blah. But I also oppose indigenous whaling, although I believe we can have a fair and serious discussion with the leaders of those communities to try to convince them to, if not give up whaling, at least try to change the practices when it comes to that. I'm sure we can negotiate with those people and have a fair and intelligent dialogue with them rather than to necessarily pass toward hardline state ban that by itself has colonialist undertones. But even it is true that some whaling myths by indigenous populations around the world, or notably things of populations like Inuits, Algonquians, and whatnot, did at least historically used a certain rhetorics or mythology, which also, if not anthropomorphized, recognize cetaceans as some kind of person-like agent and whatnot. But this shouldn't fool us on how cultures or myths can also be used in a way as to justify certain forms of domination, hunting, blah, blah. This is an apartheid, and I would welcome any conversation with maybe an Inupiat activist or whatnot, but whatever. My point being that you can find myths that or modes of thinking that understand non-humans as persons or person-like agents. This is a common fact when it comes to the Amazon cultural complex. This was well described by the like of Descola, Viverius de Castro and such. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can recognize the other as a person and still engage in forms of hunting, blah, blah. This is also, I don't know what people believe that, but I know there is at least historically some indigenous people, I don't know if it's in the Pacific or what, which fundamental myth was that some hunters could summon dolphins or porpoises by the hundred to be hunted voluntarily and whatnot. So be cautious about this. Is it pure cynical rhetoric or a more fundamental myth? It's hard to determine, but also in the rhetorics of both trainers, hunters in the West, also in corridas and such, it is not particularly, it's even mandatory to see some degree of anthropomorphism and some degree of like pretending or arguing that the other is a conscious agent that actively seeks a domination, like, the dolphins like to work with us. Also, they're the same people that call any appeal towards cetacean sapiens as anthropomorphism. But, I mean, most dominative discourses tend to be self-contradictory, you know that. So it's not surprising, but it's not, I will try to find the empirical data on this, but it's common to see For instance, in Hunters, a discourse that pretends like the other accepts its domination, its destruction, is not surprising. Whatever.
Well, it's almost extinct. There are a few of them left, but basically
Apparently they're extinct. No, I believe their extinction was. I believe they were declared extinct before that conference. I'm not sure.
we'd say it's functionally extinct. There aren't enough of them. The Baiji was a princess who was going to be married off to somebody she didn't want to, and she jumped in the river. A dolphin.
This is a common myth. You see that in the myth of the person that tries to flee sex or marriage and then transforms itself into a non-human entity is also something you see in Greece. I know it's a common anthropological myth, but whatever. This is not important here.
That's been venerated, but as human beings, unfortunately, we built things like the Three Gorges Dam, we've polluted the water, and now we don't have many of them left. So when I'm talking about this new way of thinking about conservation, I want to introduce the concept of personhood.
Okay, this is the important
Now, there's a long history of personhood in sort of moral philosophy, but this is where I have to quote someone, and there's a Professor Thomas White out of...
Yes. We'll go over Thomas White. Basically, Thomas White made a 500-page book in defense of dolphins and whales, loading their sapiency, personhood, or whatnot, and finishing with a post-sanctuary pessimistic conclusion. I do not understand why. I haven't read his book yet, but I strongly suspect that his fundamental premises are not totally exact. On my fundamental suspicion is that he ignores the problem of property, but we will go over this.
California, who's a friend and a colleague, and therefore I really do have to get what he says right, else I'll never get invited around for dinner. And he said, a person is a who and not a want.
Sorry, what?
If I get that right? A who and not a what, sorry.
Okay. This is false. So, why? Because if you know a bit about the history of personhood and whatnot, one of the basic issues here is twofold. One is the so-called notion of corporate personhood. What is that? Well, since at least, I believe, the 60s and 70s, and even before, because, well, 1819, sorry, corporations and companies were granted, for obvious pragmatic reasons, legal personhood in order to be, how about it? In order to be run in a certain way, companies were granted, obviously they're not persons, but they had to be understood as a legal person to be handled in a specific way, despite being obviously understood as the legal, obviously they're understood as the ownership of specific people, you know, obviously. But nonetheless, despite being understood as the product of, obviously not a conscious object, or the product of humans, being owned by humans, they were nonetheless also understood as persons in order to be granted certain rights to act in certain ways. This is also the case, since at least the 60s and 70s, of a number of entities such as mountains, trees, I believe rivers as well. I'm not sure. I believe it's also the case of some national monuments, specific buildings, which were understood as persons legally, but despite being inanimate objects that obviously they're not conscious, they don't have a brain, blah, blah, only on pragmatic grounds regarding conservations, not having them being exploited by mining companies or whatnot. The thing is, those trees and such are the property of states. They're not independent by themselves. They're understood as being owned by states. If states want to come, and obviously there are like legal barriers to all that, but in fine, if states wanted to act upon those properties in order to carve that mountain or enroot that tree they call. Okay, they are understood as a form of property. The idea that they're not understood as the ownership of some human being or some human-created entity at some point is lawful. This is the same for the notion of copyright personhood. The idea being that the notion of personhood and granting personhood to non-humans is simply not enough. Say when it comes to personhood being granted to a certain number of animals. Well, animals. I mean, I don't believe that elephants and cetaceans and even apes should be de facto being understood as animals, but I mean, they are biologically speaking, but from a social point of view, the downright and ad hoc understanding of cetaceans and elephants in particular as animals poses a certain number of practical and political and ethical problems. Let me show you that. It's not stolen, right? Wait a minute. Yep, animal rights. I believe no. No. I can't find the yes, that yeah. I want to cherish the name of yes. So this is one instance between others because I believe the same lawyer also tried to recognize a few apes. Okay, so this is really for another stream. The gist of it is that it is of no use. Those elephants on apes, on dolphins, are recognized as the property of specific companies, people, or charities. In that case, they were arguing of this particular elephant happy and those apes as person is used to transfer them in a sanctuary, while they will be de facto be understood as the property of that sanctuary, which is considered as a form of company or institution or charity. That's it. There is no, if you search on Google, you will find no open on explicit recognition of the problem of property by those people or by most philosophers that try to speak about that. Although I know it exists, but extremely faintly, not necessarily in an openly explored problem. We'll try to go over the literature on that. But the gist of it is that the problem of property is completely ignored.
Actually, his words were, a person is any being, no matter what their species, who has traits that imply a high level.
Nope. Corporations were understood as persons. Mountains were understood as persons.
Level of intellectual and
also, what if a sentient robot is understood as a person? What if a computer program could be understood as a person? It's not that simple. You can hypothetically ascribe to a notion of personhood to non-biological entities, whatever.
Emotional sophistication. I know it's a Saturday after a Friday at a university, and if you look around, is there intellectual and emotional sophistication? I would hope so, in the group of students coming from Loughborough University. But he sets a really...
Also, that poses other problem when it comes to the emotional sophistication. There are a certain number of people that do not possess... It also poses problem when it comes... I'm pro-choice, if you want to ask me, so... But it does... there are a certain number of interesting debates when it comes to the personhood of fetuses and such. On does the potential personhood of the fetus have any bearance on abortion? Because you can argue that even if you recognize them as persons, the autonomy of the person that carries the child is more important than the personhood of the fetus, which is easy to argue for pragmatic reason, blah, blah. This is why I'm pro-choice, basically. But also, you can argue that some people, for instance, with extreme form of mental, you don't say mental retardation, it's not politically correct, but extreme lack of mental development, people like with Angelman syndrome, partial anencephaly, blah, blah, are not emotionally sophisticated, yet you can ascribe them a form of personhood, at least for legal reason, right? Because like, if you have, say, a baby, not a fetus, blah, blah, a baby, which is carried into terms, and which possess a grave form of anencephaly or some sort of pathology that prevents it from having elaborate emotional responses behind very basic reflexes, blah, blah. If you go and kill that baby, should it be recognized as a murder or not? I argue that it should, because, well, so it poses problem. See, the problem is when it comes to legality, there's always a friction between how to classify this and how to treat legal problems on a very concrete legal ground, blah, blah, and then how you ascribe personhoods on, like how de facto this works versus how pragmatically you have to act upon it, but whatever. But what my point is that the elaborate nature of emotion is not enough. And also, you have to recognize everything that comes to cognition. It's symptomatic that it is not being acknowledged here, whatever.
I stand.
And also, you will see that there are inherent problems with the cognitivist discourse, because the cognitivist discourse, as it is, for instance, put forward notably by Lori Marino, is not enough to acknowledge notably the cetacean problem, because it totally erases the pragmatic issues of everything that surrounds the personhood and sapient mother, which is recognition of territories, recognition of resources as belonging to them, recognition of the relationship between states and individual, recognition of property, as in how the cetacean could be recognized as having a certain degree of property over some territories or some of their haliotic resources, aka fishes and squids they could hunt, how states shouldn't recognize them as resources to exploit, how they shouldn't be recognized as resources by particular companies, how exclusive economic zones who exclusive economic zones by themselves imply a certain number of issues when it comes to the recognition of cetaceans as having their own territories, blah, blah, we'll go over that. But my point is the current theoreticians behind the dolphin advocacy, dolphin and whale advocacy, appear to miss, even beyond the problem of the pro-sanctuary discourse, appear to miss key points which are key in the overall recognitions of so-called cetacean personhood and whatnot. And recognizing those key points is key to point out the fundamental flaws of the pro-sanctuary discourse. That's basically the gist of whatever.
That he talks about creatures needing self-awareness, an ability to express both positive and negative emotions, displaying self-consciousness and personality. He says they have to show abstract thought and solve complex problems. Well, he's setting...
Okay, we will go over that.
In the bar...
What I think I will do, I will make Marino TED Talk, and I will try to pinpoint the inherent limitation of the cognitivist discourse, which for me, unfortunately, leads to, again, overlook a certain number of key problems, which leads toward a certain leniency toward the pro-sanctuary discourse, blah, blah, we'll see that.
Are really high for us guys that want to show that other creatures apart from humans fulfill that. Tom's been studying dolphins as well as human beings, and he comes from a department that looks at the ethics in business, actually.
Really? I'll go over that, whatever.
And he says he has found that in dolphins, and I agree with him. In trying to talk about what is personhood, we have to distinguish the language. And one of the things we have to think about is the word between human and person. I haven't got many slides, but hopefully they're nice ones and you enjoy them. And two of the questions we have to ask are all humans persons?
Yes, that's important because that has relevance when it comes to the abortion debate and whatnot. Anyway, again, even if we recognize embryos and fetuses as potential person, the notion of person, the problem of abortion is interesting because it has some nice parallelism with the problem of cetaceans. The importance here is not just abstract assessment of cognitive abilities, it is context. The importance of using the discourse of personhood when it comes to cetaceans is not personhood by itself. It is to say that our attitude towards cetaceans cannot take the nature it does today because it infringes on the concrete lives, well-being, culture, and whatnot of cetaceans, namely that our practices of not just exploiting them, blah, blah, but also to recognize, A, their resources as ours, B, overfishing and whatnot, the destruction of their environment, and C, the recognition of their spaces as our spaces, the exclusive economic zone, the scramble for the ocean, campaigns to prospection, campaign for finding oil under the seabed, manganese nodules, blah, blah. And D, everything that has to do with captivity, which obviously means they're being understood as the legal property of concrete people and companies, is of relevance when, here. We don't pose the problem of personhood for North. It has a relevance. Here, in the same way, we cannot just assess who the features may be understood as a person because maybe it will grow up the next Einstein, whatever, without posing the problem of the bodily autonomy of not just women, because trans men or non-binary people with wombs can also get pregnant, blah, blah, but for 99% of the cases, women, the bodily autonomy of women and what is implied in practices when it comes to how unwanted pregnancies that are carried out to terms can have concrete consequences on their access to work, career, well-being, blah, blah. So the problem of personhood cannot be posed abstractly. That's my point. Also, when it comes to bodily autonomy, as we will see in another stream, bodily autonomy is absolutely fundamental. What a moment, I need to wait. I'm really sorry about everything is extremely slow because of OBS. No, wait. Wait, don't tell me it's not. Yes, it is. I'm really sorry about the delay. This is okay. So what was I saying? Yes. So the problem of bodily autonomy is also on consent are both absolutely central to everything I do. On those are one of the problems which are absolutely, as far as I'm aware, could be wrong on that. It's possible that the Thomas White book, the contrary is announced. But as far as I'm aware, the problem of consent on bodily autonomy are never, absolutely never posed by any of the current actors in the anti-Dolphinario, non-pro-sanctuary side. This is a problem because the problem of bodily autonomy and consent are A, consequences of a recognition of cetacean sapiens on personhood, and B, absolutely central to a discourse that will recognize their autonomy as well. I believe that this is a logical consequence of the notion of personhood that again is not being properly recognized, and again it harkens back to the fact that personhood should have consequences. Here, one of the consequences of a recognition of personhood is that cetaceans should be understood as having a legitimate form of bodily autonomy and should at least be attempted to be asked about a certain number of things pertaining to the changes made on their body. But also it begs the question of making first contact with them, which we will see tomorrow, how to do it and whatnot. Which also is not something. Also, yes, I made a slight mistake yesterday. I misspoke and talked about the anti-sanctuary side. No, obviously, when I was talking about Denise Herzing, she's on the pro-sanctuary side. She's basically loosely linked to the Whale Sanctuary Project superficially. But my point is that neither the Whale Sanctuary Project or the WDC or Marino, whatever, seek actively some kind of first contact project. It's not as if they had some kind of concrete project on the side. Okay, we will sanctuarize them, but maybe we'll try the application of some device to try to speak to them and ask them what they want. Nothing. There's no project of that nature, either in the side of the WDC or the other current sanctuary projects, whether the Richard O'Barry one or the Barcelona one, the Lipsoy one, or whatever. So, but we will go over that, don't worry.
And are all persons humans? The first one is a medical ethical question. And you might just say, yeah, of course every human's a person. Well, is a fetus a person?
Yes, well, I would talk.
That has a context of both religious, medical, and your personal views that come to play in relationship to that one. The second one is about animal ethics.
He could have gone forward with that team. This is an extremely important topic. He could have explored it a bit more. Also, what about dead brain people? Dead brain people, which we know that have no consciousness on their own, which brain dead state is irreversible, should be there considered as persons and should stopping their vital functions because there is a crime, or even a form of execution, that whatever.
And the use of the word person, I like it because it also desensitizes the debate from being one of using language that takes away a species bias. Because if I say I'm human and you're an animal, I'd like Joanna when she said, as a primate, as an ape that was studying, it puts us in the mix, a graduation, as Darwin would have said, between the basic and the very advanced, whatever advanced actually means.
I'm coming. I'll just take a...
So
No, there's a lot that could be said about that, but we'll skip it.
we try to remove the species bias by talking about persons. Language is also limiting. In Japan, the word for whale is kujira, and the kanji, there's two parts to the kanji character for kujira, whale. It means big fish. So you imagine if you're growing up in Japan and you're learning about whales and dolphins, you learn about 20 characters as you're going through your academic student up to before university. You learn about 20 characters for animals, and the one for whale is big fish. So you can imagine the contextual difficulty of trying to then debate an issue about why this group of people, as we might call them, or non-human persons.
Okay, so this is complicated. So one, this is a quite mammal-centric point of view. I believe the characterization, the common characterization of cetacean as species probably has some kind of bias, at least in our culture, in downgrading their ethical position, if I could say that, or their status, because we live, obviously because we understood mammals as cognitively and behaviorally closer to us than fishes. Nonetheless, even if it was the case, that wouldn't fundamentally change. Also, sapient fishes could exist. We could invent, we could conceptualize a change, a quirk of evolution where sapient or extremely advanced cognitive fishes could exist. Also, turns out, proto-sapient or even possibly sapient, we don't know, fishes exist. Because we have, these species of fish, the mormyrids. The mormyrids are a quite diminutive species of fish, which is known to have one of the biggest brain-to-body ratio in the animal kingdom. Also, I believe that it's not just the brain size, it's also like it's packed neurons, physiology, blah, blah. As you know, I have a strong critique of the use of the brain argument, although here it makes a bit more sense because the behavior is far more quick than cetaceans. Secondly, we know that behaviorally they're at least show some degree of complexity, like they play together, have different personalities and whatnot. And C, they have an extremely complex system of communication and handling their environment. What appears to be some kind of proto-trunk, which is basically their chin, allows them to carefully manipulate their environment. For instance, they can take a grain of sand and throw it about. They can selectively shuffle in the sand to try to find their prey and whatnot. B, this is a trait that is shared also by some fishes groups which have evolved convergently with more myriads when it comes to which share the same ecological niches, that they live in murky, deep rivers under tens of meters of depth, etc., which they possess extremely complex electroreception. Basically, they have specialized organs on the side of their body that allows them not only to perceive electric pulses in very subtle ways, but also to send them under very complex messages. So it's not impossible that they're sapient. Who knows? Maybe some more myriad fishes possess cognitive states, cultures that are equal to ours, we ignore them. Not impossible. Maybe they're just proto-sapiens, but they probably gravitate toward that. It's very strange, by the way, that more myriad fishes are never brought up when it comes to the whole discourse on, non-human sapiens and whatnot. But whatever. One of the problems with the current discourse when it comes to cetaceans is a very mammal-centered and particularly homo-centered conception of both the brain and behavior, but we will go over that. Basically, as you know, I'm extremely hostile to one. But whatever. We will make. You know what? Fuck that. We will make when we go over Marino, we will make. I'll develop my criticism of the use of the brain arguments in our activism.
Should be defended. But why does personhood matter? Well, because personhood creates a state of moral standing. Moral standing means there's a sense of the individual.
So here's the thing. In theory, truth, in practice, wait.
Practice.
No.
Practice. Practice.
Practice, okay. So, in practice, it is quite different. Again, yes, there is a sort of moral standing attached to the... And even then, like, for instance, okay, yes, it could be argued on the fine print when it comes to the exact laws that were enacted at the time on the difference between what was written in the law and then how de facto it was practiced. But slavery in the United States and in other countries at the time is a good instance of a state of fact where people could be simultaneously be understood as persons and as property. They were not totally be understood as objects because, for instance, okay, yes, there are some laws where when slave fucked up, the proprietor had to pay the fine and such. But de facto, how to put it, slaves were also at least limitedly subject to law. If a slave killed someone or made something considered as illegal, they were punished under law as well. Okay, yes, that could be debated. They were mostly punished inside of the, I believe English law and American law differed on that. But I'm pretty sure that at least either when it comes to slavery or when it comes to, for instance, the treatment of women in much of the Western world, there is at least partially a certain reconciliation of the notion of property and the notion of personhood. But we will go over that. We will try to go over the exact law and try to gather data on that. I'm not exactly confident on this, but when it comes to the reality of corporate personhood, the current reality of what is understood as animal personhood, it's obvious that there is no fundamental exclusion between the understanding of animal personhood and the understanding of property. Animals can still be understood animals. Non-humans can still be understood as persons and still be handled as property under a market logic. Also, does it totally exclude their... okay, yes, you could argue, that's true, you could argue that the understanding as person excludes them de facto from the market. Even then, I'm not entirely sure. This could be out. I have to admit that you could argue that even if it doesn't remove them from a notion of ownership on use, on manipulation and whatnot, it could be used, in theory, it removes them from an understanding as under a market logic. Even then, I'm not sure, because, again, sanctuaries, for instance, not all of them, but some of them are zoos-like facilities where people pay to see non-humans in captivity. Again, we will go over the data, especially when it comes to the elephants on ape sanctuaries, but I know the data goes in my direction.
And the individual creates an entitlement. You'll notice I haven't really used the word rights yet, but I think that the moral standing that creates the entitlement then leads to rights. And I'm not talking about whales and dolphins having human rights. I'm talking about them having cetacean rights. And these can be subtly different, both similar and different.
Okay, so that's interesting. So basically, it was out, for instance, that this distinction, which will be cetacean rights, will be necessary for reasons such as, well, obviously cetaceans won't have to vote yet, because it makes no sense in the context of how rights are enacted when it comes to the specific context of cetaceans, blah, blah, but that they will need, fundamentally speaking, similar rights when it comes to stuff like right to not be captive, right not to be killed and such. So I haven't talked about this, but a few years back, even more than 10 years ago, the WDC and a few other organizations enacted some kind of like bill called the Bill of Citizen Rights. The Bill of Citizen Rights, for obvious reasons, clearly goes directly and contradicts the world politics regarding sanctuaries, and not just sanctuaries, but also stuff like mass stranding, euthanasia, possibly the branding of cetaceans and whatnot. We will go over this Bill of Citizen Rights. Try to oh, wait a minute. I'll probably shave tomorrow. So, okay. We affirm that all cetaceans as persons have the right to life, liberty, and well-being. These three are obviously contradicted by sanctuaries, where there is no such thing as a liberty. Life, when it comes to politics of mass stranding euthanasia, which are neo-systematic when it comes to stranding events, at least in the West, but we'll go over that in another stream. I'll try maybe to invite the Stranded No More, the people that are behind the Stranded No More organization, although I have like fundamental disagreements on other topics. So one, every individual said, okay. Also, that's the problem, right? Because we can say that about humans, but circumstantially it's different, right? If you're being, like, what about the right for légitime défense? Oh, how you call légitime défense? Wait. right of self-defense, or circumstances where like you have like the person asked to be put down, not put down, but for ending their lives because of a terminal illness. What about opposing fascist regimes? That all of this, you know. So we need, again, when it comes to that kind of abstract rights, you have to also contextualize. You cannot leave context on the side of the road. You know what I mean? No, servitude. This is the case of sanctuaries, and also it is servitude. So servitude doesn't just mean works. We've seen yesterday servitude of exploitation. If you understood servitude as being synonymous with exploitation, doesn't necessarily mean that they have to work for that. The passive display of non-humans, for instance, in the context of zoos or even circuses at a certain extent, also also constitutes a form of exploitation. People pay to consume what is being understood as a product. This product is a non-human, which is held captive and understood as property, legally speaking, by states, and which is owned by a particular. They being exploited. That you want to know they're being exploited. You don't need active shows or swim with programs to be understood for this to be understood as a form of exploitation. Yep. As you know, well, that depends how you interpret the notion of natural environment. As you know, I oppose the notion of natural environment. I believe that their environment shouldn't be understood as a natural, but as an, which obviously when they say natural environment is always as in contrast to our environment, being understood as fundamentally non-natural, as being understood as purely human and cultural, knowing that human environments also can encompass non-human entities such as vegetations, complex ecosystem, blah, blah. And secondly, I believe that cetacean environment should be understood as social and cultural environments as much as ours, but that will be for another stream. But yes, free moment residence, that's not going on with, on they say all cetaceans, not all cetaceans means the one that we own, it's all cetaceans. That doesn't go in the direction of the sanctuary side. No, oh, this is important. This is important because the notion of property is being acknowledged. This is also the case in, I believe, in one of John C. Lee's books that he published before Janus. I believe it is not Mind of the Dolphin, another one, I forgot the name of it. And also in some writing by Malcolm G. Brenner. I have fundamental oppositions to much of what Malcolm G. Brenner had to say, but at least he appears to have recognized in some of his blog posts the problem of property. But that said, the problem here is that it says, no cetacean is the property of any state, corporation, human group of individuals. This is the case of sanctuaries. This is obviously the case of sanctuaries. So on this, they contradict themselves. Cetaceans have the rights to the protection of the natural environment. I don't know what to say about this. I mean, if say natural environment is understood, which is also paradoxically the case, if you understand this as a natural environment as a form of terra nullius, it also justifies the fact that it is being owned under as a form of wilderness by particular states that will exploit it by precisely not being understood as a social, culturally mediated space. But again, we'll go over that. So cetaceans have the right to the protection of natural environment. This is not possible under an understanding of say, natural environment as being the property of particular state, exclusive economic zones or not. Cetaceans have the right not to be subject to the disruption of their culture. This is the case of everything ranging from not only all of the anthropogenic activities like whaling, anthropogenic noise. This is also the case of so-called sanctuaries. This is which disrupt, obviously, the culture of the sanctuaries. It is also the case of I mean, in the sense that the sanctuaries cannot even have the chance to have some kind of cetacean-like culture or meet their free brethren, I mean, whatnot. And secondly, because when you euthanize a mass cetacean group and even let them the possibility to join their veterans, this will have some kind of profound impact on cetacean populations as a whole, or cetacean societies as a whole. Yes, but how can this be compatible with an understanding of their spaces are being owned by states? Like, remember that, they don't say that. They say all cetaceans have the right to freedom within the natural environment, and they say cetaceans should be the property of, which they are, they're understood as goods, okay? If there is no logic under the current understandings of states by non-human entities on oceanic spaces by states, where cetaceans are not being understood as goods under a market logic. That there's none. Even abstractly, even in abstract, they're being understood as goods. Goods doesn't mean just we will kill them on like eat their blah 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 blah. Goods can be like just being understood as resources for ecotourism being observed. We make money with the whale watching industry and whatnot. It's still an understanding of them as goods. It just is. So, and again, the only way to break the status quo is with the first contact programs. There's no other way. On serious one, not for 30 years we purportedly do some kind of first contact attempt, but then we never publish our results. I don't mean that kind of stupid shit. The right thing, so this is impossible under the current consideration of both non-humans on the spaces. So, same. And also, can they be fully realized? That's the problem, right? If we enact those laws, we pertinently know that they're always going to be like cetaceans that die because of human activities, always. This is always going to exist until humans disappear. The problem is how to regulate this. And we cannot regulate this properly with what we have on the legal level today. No state, corporation, human group, or individual should engage in any activity on demand derived from norms. Sanctuaries do that. They just do that by definition. Nothing in this declaration should prevent the state from enacting stricter provision for the protection of cetacean rights. Okay. I mean, this goes against sanctuaries. I don't know what to say. On the fact that they speak about the notion of property, speaks volumes here. I didn't read yet the book by Thomas White. I'll do this off stream, because for legal reasons, I don't believe, or for pacing reasons as well, I don't believe it's, but maybe I'll read some chapters, we will see, but whatever.
We can also examine person versus non-person. So for example, if I was to say it's about your ability to suffer, if I mocked the people in the front row here, I can't quite see you, so if I say anything nasty, please forgive me. If I made horrible comments about them, I'm sure that I could cause them to suffer a little bit. All right, embarrassment at the very least. Personal hurt if I really went to town. If I was to mock, say, my pet goose at home, in the same way, I'm not quite sure she would really take it, unless I was being aggressive towards her. If I was to mock Loughborough University, well, actually, Loughborough University is a legal person. So I have an inanimate object here in Loughborough University, which is protected. We have the lovely front audience here, who are also, I hope, are protected. And yet my goose, as another non-human, isn't protected. So there's a scale in the way that we can think about persons and non-persons.
Yes, but as recognized by state, I believe that was his point. Also, first, corporations, mountains, whatnot, they don't suffer yet, they recognize this person first. Secondly, is this enough, though? Because we know from both behavior and neurology that even very simple very simple life forms, like small fishes. There is a significant debate when it comes to insect pain and suffering, although I think it tends to go toward the direction that some degree of suffering and pain exists, which I tend to believe it is the case, at least for functional evolutive reasons. Should we understand them as persons? At least for pragmatic reasons. I mean, on the problem of fish suffering is not a joke, by the way. There are studies behind, I will try to go over this. This is notably the specialization of a friend of mine, which is a big name in the anti-speciesist. I'm not very close to the anti-speciesist movement, but nonetheless, anti-speciesist movement in French, which is Yves Bonnardel, but we'll go over that. But the gist of it is that suffering is part of the problem, but we cannot, abstracting the problem to suffering poses more issues that it creates solutions, but whatever.
Personhood.
Also, what, like, not enacting suffering, like, we know that when we oppose, I don't know, fascist regime, blah, blah, they're suffering if we, like, attack them for not paying Nazis, but it's still a greater good, except, blah, blah, whatever. This is, I totally admit I could be wrong on that.
So, as I said, creates moral standing, and therefore we have a recognition of needs. In human terms, we would say we all have basic human needs, which we have to recognize and honor each other. When we come to cetaceans, we say those needs most probably are to do with access to food, access to freedom, i.e. maybe we shouldn't imprison.
That's true, but we have to, well, yes, we have to define freedom more generally, but yeah.
Them in captivity for captive display. But also we increasingly recognize there is a thing about social cohesion. These creatures are social animals.
Yeah, which also goes against the sanctuary point for two reasons. One, because sanctuaries only one or a few individuals. This is already the case of Little Blue and Little White, where there are two females, which absolutely doesn't respect the way that most cetacean societies function. And two, because in captivity, specifically, cetacean social structures tend to be completely, especially when it comes to the gender ratio and the age ratio, they tend to be completely deconstructed. This is one of the reasons why you have so much aggression in captivity and whatnot, but even then, it's absolutely clear that there is an increased aggression in captive settings, but even then I wonder if there is a cultural component, if Western two-subs population are more aggressive in average than Eastern or Black Sea captive populations, because for instance, it's a bit anecdotal, but Andrew, which worked in the St. Petersburg Dolphinarium, never directly saw a strong interaggression between Ponticus captives there, which makes me think that it's possible that there is certain cultural aspects of Western Turkish population because of the way, like, male alliance, sex, etc., is enacted upon, that also heightens intermale aggression and whatnot. But even then, I'm not fully confident on that. We'll go over that data on other streams.
This image is a beautiful image, and this dolphin can't communicate with you through facial features like you would. It can only communicate in other ways. If we took a step further back with this photo, it'll actually be through the frame of a concrete tank. So what appears to be...
That's a very interesting point. I've argued about this in the past. This is very smart from him.
I was about to say animal. I was slipping into my own rhetoric there.
Yep. You see? This is the real drama, though. A lot of those people know that what they're doing contradicts itself. He's raising really good points here. And I could argue the same, even with people like don't like Marino, but even beyond that, like Godfrey, no, he's dead, so I can't, she told him, but Godfrey was a prime example of a theoretician that realized extremely important points when it comes to our understanding of cetaceans and whatnot, and shot himself in the foot when it comes to sanctuaries. Malcolm G. Brenner, as far as I have strong disagreements with him, is another instance of that. But we'll go over that.
But this non-human person
Marino as well, even if I have, again, strong epistemological disagreements, blah, blah.
looks pretty happy, but actually is it? And that's one of the questions we're trying to fathom as we try to understand. So I've talked about the philosophy bit, which is the bit in many ways the more difficult bit. But let's just say they have the capacity to suffer, but can we prove any of the other issues in terms of being self-awareness?
Okay, so that's, we'll go over, well, will I do it tomorrow? Okay, so I hesitate. Either tomorrow I'll stream about the device or on Marino. I hesitate. I will either make one on the device or a Marino stream. I think I'll make the Marino stream. We'll see. I think I'll make the device stream in 2 days, on the Marino stream tomorrow. But whatever. They keep on being that this he will pose the use of the brain as an epistemological tool versus the use of behavior, but whatever. Wait a minute.
And that's where we need to look at the modern-day study of dolphins. Dr. Laurie Marino and Dr. Diana Reese out of the US have done a huge range of work here. And what they've been finding is that they say there's 3 standards. Self-awareness, am I? Is this dolphin an individual in itself? Has it got self-recognition? Can it center one's attention on itself? And has it the ability of metacognition? i.e., can it reflect on its own thoughts and think about other things like the future and other creatures' feelings? Well, if we were to examine the dolphin's brain here, this is a bottleneck.
Okay, so, no, whatever. I'll go over this. The gist of it is that behavior, what we know from cetacean behavior is far more of a solid way to assess the reality of cetacean sapiens and brain. It is not to say that the cetacean brain doesn't have a certain number of characteristics that clearly go toward the direction of sapiency. I am not, like notably Justin Gregg and Monger, someone that will totally relativize the aspects of brain to work against the notion of cetacean sapiency. I believe that there are elements in the cetacean brain that goes toward it, but using exclusively or exclusively the brain as an epistemological tool to assess the notion of cetacean sapiens of intelligence is, I believe, an extreme epistemological mistake. We will go over that in the next stream, but the gist of it is that this over-focus on the notion of the brain over behavior is part of what allows a strengthening of the pro-sanctuary discourse, in particular on a certain tacit understanding of cetaceans as still being de facto property on goods under a market logic, under human handling in general. But again, we will go over that in another stream.
Dolphin, which is one of the most commonly known dolphins I think most people would recognize, what you'd find is a very, very complex brain. And this is the problem also in comparisons. When we do comparisons, we tend to go, compared to a human, this brain is a third of the size. But In terms of
I'm not sure. This is interesting. So two things. One, the fact that so I don't know if it is a turtle size. I have a doubt on that. It's interesting because people like Marino and such don't tend to say that. They tend to say they have a bigger brain, and they don't tend to bring that point. Probably because it will like Stillman the anti-intelligence argument and whatnot. So I have a doubt on that. I don't know. I know it is the case for porpoises because of the smaller size. I don't know if it's the case of Torshops. I will have to. I believe I saw a graphic that showed that it was indeed small. There could be a lot of inter-individual variation on that. I will have to go. We'll make a stream. We'll go over the brain literature. But basically, my point is that it doesn't matter. My point is that I don't know that the other is someone because of their brain. I know that the other is someone because of how they act. Well, this is interesting because obviously you go over, yes, anthropomorphism, blah, blah, blah. But the whole point of it is that the bulk of data we have on cetacean behavior, cetacean acoustics, cetacean experimentation on cetacean, etc., go in that direction that we want it or not. And even then, since the 60s and such, like invariably, across species, across individuals, when it comes to a lot of different aspects that when crossed together make sense, blah, blah. Like, there's too much information, and also like because that's the thing as well. When you're an intelligent species, your body reflects that. You have physical tools that allow you for a certain degree of flexibility. You can manipulate and analyze your environment in ways other species cannot, blah, blah. But the gist of it is that there's too much data that goes in the direction of sapiency and that cannot be readily ignored. Data which is notably ignored by Greg, but we will go over. I tried to have Justin Greg on stream to have a discussion with him. Again, not to own him, to be like, haha, gotcha, whatever, but to have a genuine good faith discussion. But yeah, the point being that the brain doesn't matter. It could be the size of a pea, I don't give a fuck. My point is, if you act as a person, you are a person. If you act toward me like I would expect a person to do, I will recognize you as another. That's the whole point. That's for me is a way more, but we will go over as well the epistemology of ethology, why I want to return to Konrad Lorenz, classical ethology, blah, blah, which I know can be recognized as a more dogmatic take than cognitivism, but I believe it is the contrary, but we'll go over that.
Of encephalation quotient, pardon me, its brain is, humans is about a 7. This is the ratio of the brain size to the rest of the body. With a dolphin, a bottlenose dolphin, it's about 5. So that's 1 to the dolphin and 1 to the human. But again, the problem with that context of that scientific type of study is we always start with the human measure.
Yeah, this is extremely important. He's right in, I said, I have a doubt on the brain. I doubt the brain to body ratio of the cetacean, the dolphin brain was not as big as humans. I thought there was whatever. The point being, he's right in saying that. I know that Marino has also assessed that. She acknowledged that there is a bias on this, on that, but how to put it? I take notably strong. I could be wrong on that. I admit that, but I take grievance with the fact that Marino, in particular, assesses that by rigidly comparing what will be like the zones used by the human brain for certain functions with the size and shape of those very zones in the cetacean brain, she came to rigid conclusions when it comes to, for instance, cetacean being more emotional and less technical and stuff, and I totally disagree with that, totally disagree. For me, this is, if I may use a term that was used by some science fiction cyberpunks authors, this for me is neuromancy. This for me is neuromancy. That, like, in the sense that for me it's like phrenology. You see what is in the brain, and from that you conclude that we have to assess and read all of their behavior from what we see from the brain and then reaching specific ethical conclusions. And I take strong issue with that. I do not believe this idea, for me, like first, when you go toward that conclusion, it can easily be used to justify sanctuarization, arguing, oh, they're not like us, they cannot understand mathematical stuff, technical, they're probably more stupid when it comes to like concrete reasoning, but they're more emotional. And then, you know, if you say they're more emotional, you say that, oh yes, they cannot they cannot control themselves, blah blah. So it justifies the sanctuary. Like it can easily be bent in a way as to justify forms of oppression. Shall I remind you that the kind of rhetoric we had in the 19th century against women, black people, and whatnot? Not for nothing again. Like I know I was criticized on this, but why is this surprising to see reappearing in the very specific discourse when it comes to the so-called Dolphin figure, blah, blah, forms that we've seen in racism in the 19th century? Like this, I do not believe this is surprising. I believe that our civilizations tend to repeat themselves or reiterate themselves when it comes to systems of operations, blah, blah, institutionalization discourses. I believe civilizations that have a certain, how to put it, civilizations that have a certain frame of thinking tend to reiterate what they have done before for pragmatic reasons, but whatever. The point being that this is what he says is real. On the other problem, I don't know at what point Marino does it, but it's absolutely clear that when it came to both Chauncey Lilly and also on This Is Terrible, Gregory Bateson, there was some degree of bias on the mammalian brain against the bird brain. Like for a long time, and I strongly suspect that there was a bias that was particularly fed by cognitivism, when it wasn't by early ethologists, by the way. I believe there was a strong bias against bird cognition, despite bird behavior clearly showing that they had nothing to envy against mammals, because of the small size of the brain. No, of course, we know that brains have more packed neurons, they have other structures, blah, blah, hyperstriatum, etc. But the gist of it, this is, well, we will go over that. We will go over epistemology, Chalmers, who is he called? Hilary Putnam, the problem of, we'll go over that, okay?
And then we're comparing. So if you take, say, birds, which many species like parrots appear to have high intelligence, you're talking about quite low sizes of brains to the rest of the size of the body, and so maybe those aren't the best comparisons. Some of the recent work, which is getting really exciting, is study of neurons in the brain. And what they found...
Yes, that's why Marino specialized in the spindle cell thingy. She's right, by the way. As far as I'm aware, it is true. You find spindle cell exclusively in, as far as I'm aware, in gorillas, humans, elephants, and cetaceans. And then, even then, who knows? We cannot totally exclude the possibility. I don't know if spindle cells are also found in mermaids and octopi. It's possible it's not as universal. And again, like, we can perfectly, like, obviously it's hypothetical, but we can hypothesize the possibility that sapiency could be found in elaborate machines using silicon and whatnot. Like, this is basically the Putnam problem, but whatever.
Recently is a series of things called spindle cells.
Yep. Okay.
And spindle cells are neurons which appear to be really to do with the emotional cognitive behavior. And we know in humans that if these neurons get affected, then we see it in dementia patients and patients who've lost that ability to relate socially. There's only 3 other groups of creatures that have them. That's the great apes, elephants, and whales and dolphins. So there's some...
Yes, but that begs the question of the status of mermaid fishes and octopi, but whatever.
Thing about that group where social...
Also, What about bird behavior? Again, if it begs the question there, if I don't know that, I don't know the literature. We'll go over that, okay? We'll go over the literature. But if those spindle cells aren't found in corvidum psittacid, what we know from behavioral testing on the behavior in general, that clearly they show high cognitive abilities and cognitive abilities equal, if not even superiors, when it's come, especially in linguistics, to apes. Like what we totally exclude, like cognitive abilities in psittacid and corvis because they don't have those stupid spindle cells? No. It probably means that they have other forms of neurons by convergent evolution and whatnot. Wait. I need to show you that because this is important. We'll speak of that in the next stream. Yes, type physicalism. Yeah, multiple. Yeah. Multiple. Okay, so this notion, this is one of the biggest sledgehammer arguments against a rigid understanding, use of the brain as an argument when it comes to that context, is the problem of multiple realizability. The problem of multiple realizability, because it means that the same function can be attained by different systems. And that appears to be the case. Of course, when it comes to machines, it's still hypothetical, but it appears to be at least the case when it comes to A, mammals, B, psittacid and corvids, birds, and 3, octopi. And even then, there's more millet fishes and whatnot, but I'm not aware of the studies that were made, if any, on the brain of murmurid fishes. But again, we will go over like the literature on multiple realizability, Hilary Putnam, epistemology, type physicalism, blah, blah. Okay. Oh, yes, Fodor as well. Yeah, I forgot about that.
The ability potentially to empathize with each other is crucially important. So, okay, the biology is sort of going, I think, in the direction I want to go. But what about behavior? Okay. Well, we can do tests. So dolphins like this can be put through mirror recognition tests. This is where we take a dolphin, we put a sticker on it, we put a mirror in front of it, and we'll see if that dolphin recognizes itself by noting that the sticker is on it. You can do it with a whole range of creatures, and you get varying responses. With human beings, it depends if it's a Saturday morning or...
Yes. Don't worry about that. Oh my God. Obviously, it goes from the beginning. Really sorry about that. Okay.
I was very envious of Claude having... If these neurons get affected...
So 2 points here. First, again, I haven't read the studies, I will have to do it. I don't know if the spindles are referred to so-called mirror neurons. Especially, I could be wrong on that again, but he seems to imply that so-called spindle cells exclusively play a role when it comes to stuff like facial recognition, empathy toward the other. But he's not referring to cognitive processes, which are used for high-level thinking, abstract thinking, and such. The latter is what interests me. So if the spindle cells appear to only play a function when it comes to empathy and stuff, but not high-level abstract thinking, that seems to relativize the whole studies of Marino. But again,
And what they found recently is a series of things called spindle cells. And spindle cells and neurons cognitive behavior. And we know...
A, he only refers to laboratory studies. This is a problem because, again, it appears to dismiss and to put as a second-hand argument the bulk of data that we have on observed behavior on both free and captive, especially free individuals. What I'm arguing here is that the bulk of observations, photographic material, video material, anecdotal evidence, observation by studies, by researchers and whatnot, plus what we know of cetacean behavior, what we know of the cetacean brain. Obviously, I don't dismiss it altogether. I only dismiss it as a first-hand primary argument. And what we know from the experimentation, or what we know as well from cetacean acoustic on the context of the use of that cetacean acoustic, goes in the direction of cetacean championship. But we cannot dismiss as some kind of garbage, partial evidence the bulk of evidence regarding direct observation. The other thing is, direct observation is not just, oh, there's some guy that saw in the distance a dolphin doing something. A lot of it, on a lot of the observation that at least pushed people to admit that something like cetacean sapiency existed, were direct interventions on interactions between cetaceans and humans, namely cetaceans sending humans, cetacean collaborating with humans during generation after generation for hunting on fishing events. Solitary cetacean, especially them. So again, we'll also specific relations in captivity and such, but we will go over that.
In humans, that if these neurons get affected, then we see it in dementia patients and patients who've lost of creatures that have them. That's the great apes, elephants, and whales and dolphins. So there's something about that group where social ability, the ability potentially to empathize with each other, is crucially important. So, okay, the biology is sort of going, I think, in the direction I want to go. But what about behavior? Well, we can do tests. So dolphins like this can be put through mirror recognition tests. This is where we take a dolphin, we put a sticker on it, we put a mirror in front of it.
Okay, so first, this is an extreme reduction of the whole point about behavior, but whatever. The other thing is, I possess, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I possess a strong criticism of the Gallup test when it comes to the mirror recognition. Why? Because, not because of the mirror itself, although there was a line of criticism by some methodologists that the mirror, which is absolutely legitimate, by the way, which is that basically a lot of animals are centered on other senses, such as acoustic senses like bats, or other dogs. So a dog may not recognize themselves in the mirror, but they may recognize the equivalent, the mirror equivalent, no, the odor equivalent of mirror. So it is possible that they have self-awareness, but centered on other senses. So this is it. But my criticism is that the use of the sticker supposedly is here to confirm the validity of the test. The thing is, when you observe the behavior, especially of apes, in reaction to a mirror, they have a vast array of behavior that clearly show that they recognize what the mirror and whatnot. Like, it is impossible not to recognize it otherwise. You have to be of extremely bad faith, and you have to bend the interpretation of behavior in clearly extremely far-fetched way in order not to recognize this as direct recognition of it as a recognition of the mirror. I'll go over that. A few years back, 10 years ago actually, I went to the, I don't know if I have the video here, I will have to find it. Wait. Yeah, no, well, 10 years ago, I went to the zoo that is the zoo in Paris, the Ménagerie des Jardins et Plantes, where they have some orangutans captive. And there was a female orangutan called Theodora, which is known for interacting with visitors and whatnot. I brought to the zoo a small portable mirror and I showed it to her and I filmed her reaction. And her reaction was as follow. She saw that and her eyes opened and her lips clearly went like that. Like, she clearly had like what you would understand as a surprised face. So she waved her hand several times, like she clearly waves it. She like as if she was testing something. She made some what we call a grimace, like making faces, while waving her hand, making experiments. And then after 1 minute, her surprise stops. She settles, and basically she started to inspect her hair and inspect her teeth with that. You know, because she had like how do you call this? Tartre. Like when you have like accumulation of calcareous waste in the teeth. Well, and she was like, and when I remove the mirror, she will make like this with her hand. She will do that with the hand, and then I will show her the mirror, and she will continue the activity. So you can argue, okay, in a dolphin it's more ambiguous because obviously the dolphin doesn't have a face, blah blah. Although you can see more or less surprise in a dolphin, they become more active, their eyes become more whatever. But in an ape, at least, it's impossible not to interpret that way. It's impossible. So again, we will go over the epistemology of behavior, Konrad Lorenz, the Occam-Russell, blah blah. But wait, I want to show you the vid. I believe I have it. So let me show you this. Yep. Okay. So potato quality here. Where's OBS? Okay. No. Oh shit. Where is? Oh, come on. I have it here. Oh my god, I hate Macintosh. Wait. Non, elle est juste grosse en fait. Elle est juste comme ça. No, sorry. Bon, je veux pas faire un sienne. Okay, so I'm really sorry about that. It's just that. Okay, so I'm really sorry about that. This is Macintosh shit, and it doesn't. Oh my god. Okay, I'm having some problems with the Macintosh. I'm really sorry about that. It just retarded. It just extremely retarded. And I'm sick of this shit. Tu vois qu'il reconnaît, tu vois que c'est humain, c'est tout. Oh, because it's VLC, okay. Oh, God, it doesn't have an opinion on it. Ouais. I'm really fucking sorry about that. It's just bad. Macintosh is bad, okay? It's objectively a bad thing.
Ses dents.
Ah, tu vois, il regarde ses dents pour... ouais.
C'est sa coiffeuse, on dirait.
Non, elle est juste grosse en fait.
Mm.
No, that's not what I wanted. You... Yep, okay. I will reiterate all of this. Non, elle est juste grosse en fait. Elle est juste comme ça. I was just telling that. Ah bah tu vois, parce qu'il y a un mail en fait. Ah oui, c'est les cheveux presque. See? I wish I had filmed the whole behavior. Tu vois qu'il reconnaît, tu vois que c'est humain, c'est tout. Il se reconnaît, voilà. Ouais.
Petit singe.
Ses dents.
Ah, tu vois, il regarde ses dents pour... ouais.
C'est sa coiffeuse, on dirait. Petit singe.
Again, like, if this doesn't show you, I wish I had filmed the first moment when they realized that, you know, the mirror and shit. But the point, again, okay, yes, you can argue that with dolphins it will be less obvious and whatnot. Although, I argue it wouldn't. Like, if they see a mirror, you will see like a certain activity from their body, like the way they open their eyes, their vocal activities and whatnot, how they would like observe themselves on the mirror. I think there are videos out there of cetacean interacting with mirrors. There was one ambassador dolphin, I don't remember which one. I think it was Dusty. I think it was Dusty that broke the mirror, but after interacting with it, but like, it's obvious, like the behavior shows, like they clearly are not afraid by it. They're curious about it, they kind of inspect it, etc. Like, on even then you can argue that by having senses more focused on acoustic capabilities than visual, they may have a more like, they may understood it more as an alien object than something that they will recognize themselves on, but whatever. The point being that, do we need like the use of such marks? Like, this is the problem, right?
And we'll see if that dolphin recognizes itself by noting that the sticker is on it. You can do it with a whole range of creatures, and you get varying responses. With human beings, it depends if it's a Saturday morning or whatever. So you get about a 95% success rate. With dolphins, it's closer to 100%. We used to do it with elephants. We thought it never worked with elephants. And what people used to do is take a mirror, bathroom mirror, hold it up to the elephant with a sticker on him, and the elephant just stood there. A couple of years ago, Frans de Waal and his team realized that actually taking a small mirror and holding up to
Frans de Waal is important for other reasons. I haven't read him enough. I know he's important when it comes to the epistemology of behavior and whatnot. I will do it offline. I know that he may carry some arguments that could nuance my point on epistemology of ethology and whatnot. I'm aware of that. So again, everything I say, I'm not dogmatic. I may change my mind on most what I'm saying most of the time. I'm conscious, for instance, that my take on epistemology of behavior, the importance of innate behavior and whatnot, could be nuanced with views on epigenetics, could be nuanced by a reassessment of early experiments made by early ethologists or ornithologists in 1900, maybe if you replicate today some observation experiments made by Lawrence or by, who is he called, by Eric van Holst or by I don't know, Whitman and Harold, maybe they will not show the exact same results I admit the possibility that my take on ethology is weaker than I thought. I'm open toward this possibility. Nonetheless, I think the other side is too weak. The other side is too weak and is not thinking properly. But again, this will be for another stream.
To an elephant was a bit stupid. So what they did was they took...
Which, again, no. Why? Why would it? Everything behavioral speaking, or acoustically speaking, everything we know from elephant behavior goes in the direction, at least, of some form of proto-sapiency. I mean, their attitude toward the deaf, their attitude toward the siblings, their attitude toward the management of law and problem solving, their use of infrasounds, whatever.
A life-size elephant mirror.
And the social organization, the fact that they have like horizontal, non-hierarchical matriarchies. Again, I'm not as knowledgeable when it comes to elephants compared to cetaceans, but my understanding of elephant behavior is that we want it or not, it goes toward the direction of sapiency.
And held it up to the elephant, and the elephant immediately went, oh yeah, it's over here. Again, the context, we were trying to use it. He went, oh yeah, it's a size elephant mirror, and held it up. So what they did was they took a life-size elephant mirror and held it up to the elephant, and the elephant immediately went, oh yeah, it's over here. Again, the context, we were trying to use a human methodology and our view of the world, looking through our window to try and understand the elephant. In this case, we needed something different. With dolphins also, there's what's called a paddle test, as the way I describe it, where sounds are broadcast to the dolphins, and then...
I wonder if this isn't from Herman. Could be wrong, though. It could be Rice, but I believe it's Herman.
Asked to distinguish between the previous sound and the sound they're just hearing. And
yes,
if the
I've heard about that.
Sound is close, they hit the pedal that says yes. If it's different, they hit the pedal that says no.
Yeah, okay, that must be Herman. Yeah, the yes-no pedal was Herman.
But what was interesting, they introduced a third paddle, and without a reward structure around it, the third paddle says, I don't know. And the dolphins, where the sound gets down to the level where we think that maybe they won't be able to distinguish either, they hit the don't know sound. This shows something about self-referential behavior in the dolphins, that they are able to distinguish and also answer a question in a different way.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Those tests seem to confirm a lot of things that are at least strongly inferred by behavioral evidence. But when we have this behavioral evidence, shouldn't be the first move to try first contact? If you have even the suspicion that we're faced with a sapient species, shouldn't we try at least partially some kind of first contact politics? That's the thing, though. Do we need 100% proofs of that? No. If we even suspect, that's why Greg on shit are wrong, by the way, but whatever. If we suspect that we're faced with a person with a non-human intelligence, shouldn't be the first move, especially with the world context of anthropogenic activities, captivity and whatnot, exploitation. Shouldn't the first move be, we try to make first contact, we try to seriously speak to them. You will see in the stream I will do on our project with the device, on where we try to go over the different projects, what was done before, on the current, not competing, I don't like to say that, but the other alternative projects that exist, the one by Herzing, Sugarman. I know Sugarman knows me because he's on the group, but Sugarman, Kasewitz, Kuya, whatever. I'll try to go over what I believe are the fundamentally theoretical or mostly methodological flaws of the other projects. Again, people not being, yes, the other project, they're so stupid. It's not that. I'm not impugning the intelligence or the competence of other researchers that have worked on this. My problems is, I believe, is that most activists on people that are active in the world cetacean field are held by what I believe are fundamental neurotic, social, political aspects. Not, again, it's not that they're not smart, it's that they're prisoner of a network or cobweb of views on ideas on social situations that makes it extremely difficult for them to break the status quo and seriously engage into first contact beyond a superficial assessment of it, on beyond what could be seen as a fantasized projection in the future of, oh, maybe one day we could seriously engage into it or whatnot. I will try to present the evidence to all this, but my understanding of it pushes me toward that direction. But again,
showing quite a level of sophistication. I'm not a great fan of captivity, by the way. I think there's some interesting stuff that has come out of it, but as we learn more about these creatures, I don't think they ought to be held in captivity and in tanks.
Should we talk of them as critters? I mean, he criticized indirectly the fact that we talked of them as animals, so why not? I mean, again, I'm not into political correctness. If you know me, you know that one of the reasons why I departed a bit from a certain far left, despite identifying as at least very close to anarchism, is because I think there are inherent limitations to identity politics. But I do believe that a reassessment of the way we speak of cetaceans, the word we use to qualify them, is useful and efficacious. I don't believe we have to attack people for this. I did that in the past. I was an idiot when I was younger. But it's of no use to attacking people because they talked of wilderness or whatever. But I think that if we have to engage into it, we have to go beyond notions such as animal wilderness and whatnot. At least in the way we speak and think of terms like wilderness and animal and whatnot. But whatever, we'll go over that.
If we look into the wild studies, what we find is some remarkable things. Have any of you seen the orcas on the old David Attenborough films where they come up on the beach and they're hunting sea lions in Patagonia? Well, a study there, which is a long-term study, noted one year that there was an orca whose jaw had broken and couldn't feed. So basically the scientists said, well, okay, that one's gone. We're going to write that one off. It won't be here next year. But they carried on watching. And what they found was other orcas were hunting and then bringing food to feed that orca.
So this is not surprising. There's extensive database evidence of the same thing in other groups and other species. There was an observation made by Ingrid Visser. I hate Ingrid Visser, by the way, on Bob the orca and such. We'll go over that. But there was notably an observation made of Ingrid Visser on a local New Zealand orca population that confirmed this. I mean, again, this is part of the data bulk that goes in the direction of cetacean sapiency. He just cites one against many. When it comes, for instance, to cetaceans having humans, it's often conceived as some kind of myth. It is not. It is not. Some individual cases may be invention or some kind of certain interpretation, but we will go over the data, but the data goes in that direction that we want it or not.
Took about a year, but the jaw recovered, and then that orca was just part of that society and carried on. So what was it culturally that led to that to happen? Well, maybe that orca was the son or daughter of one of the lead females, and she wanted her genes to continue. That might be one biological explanation.
We know it's not the case, by the way, because we have at least, for instance, first there are a lot of this will imply that there is a form of egoism inside of I believe that he's talking of the L-pod resident population, I'm not sure though. A form of egoism inside of orca populations where a population inside the populations try to... first, I'm not sure if leadership is transmitted from mother to mother when it comes to orca. It may be the case, I'm not sure. Secondly, is this totally the case? Like you have some kind of dynasty of whales inside the whale population? I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure about that. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case. That's not a good explanation for that. Because we have, for instance, other instances in cetacean population where it's clearly like casual members having strong scoliosis, not being able to feed, and yet the other thing also is there is this famous case, we'll go over that. This famous case where a few sperm whales adopted, apparently, tertiums with a strong form of scoliosis. Right. Well, that case, which tends to show that empathy on interspecies adoption is more of a thing, especially of ones that are vulnerable. Also, you have a lot of interspecies adoption in cetacean. For instance, two shops that have adopted babies from on youngs from how do you call this, common dolphins, pilot whales, and so on. A lot of hybridization events, but we will go over that data again. Rescue, what's that? I hope he's not still captive.
In 2004, Astro was a stranded dolphin, and
Oh, he died. Oh, well. Pneumonia, obviously, they all die of pneumonia. I mean, all, but it's a common. I believe this is really captive. Pneumonia, as far as I'm aware, is a really is an illness that you mostly find in captivity. I'm not sure if pneumonia is as prevalent, if any, in free cetaceans. I will have to look at the data on this, but I'm pretty sure this is an effect of immunodepression in captive cetaceans. But grave form scoliosis, I know they're pretty common in torsions because I've seen a paper. I'll try to find. Oh, you have that illustration. Yep, that one. Apparently it's very common, so I don't think that it was necessary to capture him and put him in captivity and whatnot, but we will go over that. The paternalism, the idea of sea hospitals, how it will be recuperated by future sanctuaries and whatnot. What is the image? Where does it come from? It's not showing the illustration that was. Yeah, semi-captive. I mean, no, they're captives. I have a doubt if Kuyai isn't in walking institution that does those. I don't know if it's in Nexo with the Rotten Institute where they are allowed to come out at times and such, but come on. If anything, it approximates what I was talking about yesterday, the institutional Foucauldian-like system, blah, blah, whatever. We'll go over that in another stream.
Maybe it was just one of the group. They empathized and they wanted her to survive, him to survive.
I mean, why wouldn't it be selective though? Why won't they do that by default? Because they recognize that abandoning all those bats. I mean, and also that's the other thing. A lot of, I'm pretty confident that Marino argues that, although she's not the only one, but we'll go over that. I know that at least a certain number of ideologues inside of activism don't hesitate to argue that cetacean will have some kind of innate hyper-empathy and hyper-emotional attachment that will be so emotional that they will die from mass strandings, blah, blah. And this is because of that impulse toward empathy. They will save other cetaceans, etc. First, this is fucked for two reasons. One, because it totally denies the possibility, which I think is the right solution, that cetaceans do it for cultural reasons. We know that historically and currently, some human populations had clear, strong conceptual structures on moral systems that prevented violence and encouraged radical non-violence. And this obviously had cultural conceptual roots. Why? We know that, for instance, you have no extinct civilization called the Indus Valley civilization, something like 300 years ago, 400 years ago, at the same time that summer. This civilization, despite being a vertical civilization with urbanism, agriculture, using rivers and so on, clearly was at least fundamentally non-violent, mostly non-violent. We know that because we have found close to no weapons during archaeological records. As far as I'm aware, we haven't found representations that were bellicose. We know that they had extensive trade relations with their tribal neighbors, and this leads to believe that they existed as a full-fledged civilization in the narrow sense of civilization as a vertical system, because obviously notion of civilization can be extended to any human culture. While being non-violent for at least 700 years. The other thing is, we know that a certain number of tribal societies have radical non-human violence. The Moriori, which were a people, Polynesian people that lived on Chatham Island, adopted, probably because of concrete material on functional reasons, on their small Chunjua island where there wasn't a lot of food and space, a radical system of I will try to go over the paper on this to be sure I'm not, it's not some kind of myth, but or invention. It's possible. So there's a lot of stupid anthropological myth. For instance, the idea that the Easter Island natives totally destroyed their ecosystem. We know today is not entirely the case. Blah blah. But whatever. The point is, as far as we're aware, they created an extremely fanatical, non-violence-based system where violence was seen as fundamentally bad, prescribed, whatnot. In the 19th century, the New Zealand iwis, the Maori clans, had access to muskets, to firearms, because of trades with the British colonists. Some iwis became more powerful, crushed their competing iwis, and unified into bigger clans or whatnot. Some clan, I don't remember which one, traveled to the Chatham Islands, conquered them, the Moriori natives, and enslaved them. The Moriori could have resisted. We know this because of oral tradition and whatnot, and refused to resist in the name of the moral system. And we have other instances in anthropology. For instance, a people that I've met a long time ago when I went to the Taman Negara National Park in Malaysia, called the Batek. The Batek are, I believe you call, how do you call these people? I have a doubt. I believe they're the Orangasli people, if I'm not wrong. The parts of the Orangasli / Negrito people that live there. Well, some kind of obsolete anthropological classification, whatever. Those people have created a radical, non-violent moral system. We know it because the anthropologists that studied them and whatnot, which is justified on religious and religious and cultural grounds. And when you speak to them about it, they explain it to you how, like, They have a world system that they built. I don't remember how it was exactly. It was in relation to certain spirits. They have relations to and whatever. The gist of it is it's entirely possible that cetaceans, for pragmatic or utilitarian reasons, have created a radical nonviolent system, including that pushed them toward nonviolence toward humans. On that, if they had access to all the material on technological realities, they may abandon such a moral system. The gist of it is it's extremely funny, extremely fucking funny, that the same people that refuse the possibility of any innate ground of cetacean behavior that, for instance, may explain cetacean hunting, that, for instance, there may be some kind of fundamental hunting innate driving cetaceans that is articulated to more complex unlearned cultural based customs when it comes to hunting. The same people also believe that their brain is shaped in such a way that they cannot avoid helping other cetacean humans that justify their captivity, centralization, blah, blah. Extremely fucking funny.
In this case. More recently, we've had the reverse situation where an older dolphin, a film out of Korea, and there was an older dolphin that was ill, and the other dolphins actually formed a raft.
Yeah, this is a very famous case. I have it in the document list. I'll try to make like Vouch, you know, I'll make a hyper drive where I put all of the fucking studies, all of the fucking arguments, but this is for the long term, for
underneath
no videos.
The dolphin to keep her going.
This is a famous case. I know it's not the only one though.
Held her at the surface. Now we've seen this with holding up with cars before, but never holding up other dolphins that actually needed, was most probably past reproduction age, wasn't going to contribute to the community any further in terms of biological terms, but most probably was contributing from a cultural point of view.
Yep.
And this is the thing we've discovered now. Culture in these creatures is actually as important as some of the biological issues that we've been dealing with.
One of the proof, the pro-sanctuary and the general mainstream discourse, even the one that deem itself as progressivist, is that it appears to completely ignore culture as a factor. For instance, when it comes to begging dolphins, there is a few populations, there are a few populations, notably in Australia or the United States, which are known for systematically begging for food. The mainstream discourse tends to, especially certain conservation agencies and whatnot, tend to assume that this is some kind of condition response behaviorist-based explanation where dolphins are so fucking dumb that people start to feed them, they eat them, and then they learn that it's easier to eat fish than hunting, and then they start to fucking beg for food. This narrative doesn't make sense, A, from what we know of cetacean behavior, where near systematically or systematically refuse that food, and B, totally ignores the possibility that there are circumstantial and environmental reasons for that, especially concerning that A, when it comes to the Florida areas, namely Sarasota, Panama City Beach, and Savannah in Georgia, not in Florida, in Georgia. All of these places were subject to dead zones, and B, when it comes to Australia, meaning Shark Bay and Tangalooma, those places didn't have dead zones, but are considerable and radical degradations of fundamental ecosystem there, which are like seagrass meadows, which we know have an impact on the nectonic fauna, which obviously has an impact on dolphins. So the gist of it is, why will this behavior be understood as cultural or societal induced? Like, why could it be that they decided consciously to start to beg because they realized that they were dying of hunger, and that this was a strategy that was like, why? And also, if it is like, it is extremely symptomatic that the same people, I mean, I'm not strawmanning here, I'm familiar with the discourse, okay? The same people that are all about dolphin sapiency, personhood, blah, blah, big brain, are the same people that don't hesitate to go towards some kind of behaviorist reduction of cetacean behavior and completely ignore the possibility of a cultural and societal factor in especially free cetacean behavior.
I just wanted to show you a couple of very quick ones.
Yes, that's, I believe, I know that one. That one, that was an ex-captive cetacean, but that was freed at some point in Australia that learned how to use their tail to move, which is a common dolphin airman trick that free cetaceans don't do. So
This dolphin is called Billy. Billy, about 20 years ago, Billy lives in off Adelaide in the Port River there, and we have a long-term study. We've been looking at them there. Billy got trapped behind a marina wall and had to be taken into captivity for about 3 weeks, and then she was released. Billy was never made to do any tricks or anything for food while she was in the facility, but a short time afterwards, Billy started doing this. Now, this isn't just Billy jumping out of the water. This is called a tail walk. Billy is actually up and racing backwards. I'm afraid I haven't got video to show you of this, but she's going backwards at a pace. It doesn't help her in feeding. It doesn't help her in attracting a mate. She's very, very successful at doing that. She's had a number of calves, but she just seems to be doing it for fun. And other dolphins in that community have started to learn it. But why would they do that? It's using up energy. It's expending energy they should be using for hunting, we thought. It might be that they're just having fun.
I mean, why though? Like, we know that free cetaceans group have a moment for take much of their time for hunting, and then have like pause moments where there's play, socialize, whatever. So, what if they just do that during the play times, or whatever?
And if they can have the capability of having fun, then maybe something else is also going on.
And also, we know that the capability for having fun is something that is extremely well known, not just because of the cliche of the dolphin having fun or whatever. This is well known with boat riding in dolphins, groups. I've seen that in Costa Rica, by the way. Groups of dolphins using the surf of waves. In a very like organized, ritualistic way. Like this is masturbation on erotism in dolphins, like dolphins having oral sex and so on. Like this is evidence that is no evidence since the 1900s. This is not particularly surprising.
The last short story I wanted to tell you very quickly before the end is a story of a dolphin.
He just uses classical example in cetology. He's a smart guy. He's clearly on the right direction. But
Called Kelly. Kelly was in Mississippi, and she was in captivity, and she was taught to, by the trainers, to clean up the tank at the end of the day. It was quite a cost-effective
I think I've heard about that case.
method. You'd say, go and swim around and pick up all the debris. And what Kelly managed to do was bring debris in. She gets fed a fish as a reward. Kelly was quite smart, though, and what Kelly did was she went out and she found a big piece of paper, brought it back, and she got a reward. She found a small piece of paper, brought it back, and she got a reward. And something happened in Billy's mind. Because the next time, Billy went out and found a big piece of paper, she hid it, and then started ripping small pieces off, and then taking the small pieces back to get a reward. So Billy... in this case, Kelly, I think...
If anything, that shows that they have notions like counting, probably something like an economic system. When I say economics, by the way, I absolutely sure there's an equivalent of that. I don't mean like money or whatever. I mean the possibility of exchanges. Obviously, they don't have pockets or whatever, but it's very possible, for instance, that different cetacean groups negotiate together when it comes to whom can use what food in what territory, at what rate, what species. It wouldn't be surprising if it was the case, knowing that cetaceans as a whole appear to work as a worldwide network where different populations cohabit with others, that they share the same spaces, that they more or less intersect when it comes to migrating routes, or the haleutic resources. The fish and squids they eat, they feed on, whatever.
Was doing a little bit of game theory. I think she was doing some quite basic mathematics, but pretty good for her. And she was developing that and then teaching it to her other colleagues. I'll close with those examples, but the lesson for me, I think, is to say that we have to make a leap. We can no longer look at whales and dolphins as just big stocks of animals that are out there. We can't talk about it's acceptable
but that's the
to
thing,
lose.
though. That was the mistake of Godfrey as well. It's very nice to not see them as big stock of animals, but it's impossible not to do so with a change in what we understand as a property on legal terms. We have to acknowledge the problem of property on ownership on a legal level. It cannot be ignored. We cannot ignore that point. It just can't. We can't ignore that point. So, whatever.
5%. We have 196 bottlenose dolphins off the north coast of the UK. If we were to lose 3 of the females, which are the ones that culturally are passing on information, we actually might lose the whole of that population. So we can know.
I don't know if I don't know if it's the case though. I mean, why do the females are the only one that teach the child how to properly hunt certain prey and such? I'm not sure about whether.
No longer talk about small percentages. We have to jump our anthropocentric views and we have to start thinking about individuals and those subpopulations, the cultural groups that are there. We have to look into the eyes of these creatures and be able to understand what it means. And I think we owe something to future generations. It's not just to hand over to them the number of species that were there when we walked upon the earth, but we have to hand over to them all the applied knowledge and experience we've had. We have to say that conservation has to be tempered.
I don't agree with that. Basically, I know what he's referring to and I get his point, but basically, cetaceans are not, isn't that symptomatic of their view as like goods to be owned, though? As if we had to give cetaceans to the future generations, as if they were like a collection of how do you call those? Of stamps, as if they were like heirlooms. Like, no. Cetaceans should be valued by themselves. Who cares about the future generation of humans? We're not trying to conserve cetaceans for our grandchildren to be able to see whales in the wild. We're doing this for the fucking whales. What do you mean? That's part of the conceptual fuckery here. So, whatever.
By our ever-expanding understanding of the moral empathy for these creatures. It's a huge challenge.
So that's the other problem. We cannot having an entire ethical system depend on our moral empathy. It has to depend on a clear on logical, on explicit understanding of the modalities of the problem, not on moral empathy. I'm not trying to recognize that whales are people because of sheer moral empathy. I'm trying to recognize them as people because I recognize that not doing so has negative consequences for whales. That's the thing, though. I mean, I don't have moral empathy for people that are like serial killers and are in prison, yet I'm against the death penalty, and I recognize that having them live under basic standard of care on respecting basic laws when it comes to the way we treat human beings and prisoners is fundamental. There are people I don't like. In a good instance is I don't like Lori Marino, but I wouldn't wish Lori Marino to not be subject to the basic standard of care that society and civilizations allows us to. Like, part of what makes a civilization is, even if I don't like my neighbor and I have no moral empathy, obviously moral empathy in the sense if they were in danger I will save them and whatnot, but for me it's not just about some kind of like basic empathy, at least that you admit moral in a more abstract level. But for me it also comes from a logical calculation. I recognize that we live in a society where guaranteeing rights for everyone is part of what makes the currents of the society. It goes beyond a mere assessment of moral empathy. It goes to a more conceptual and structural and cultural system, and I believe cetaceans have that. But we'll go over that in other streams.
It's a massive challenge, but for us as human beings, I think we can rise to it. I think they deserve it, and I think we deserve it, and I think the world will be better for it. Thank you very much.
Here's the thing. When we say we deserve it, again, it goes back to what he was trying to denounce on Weekly, so on anthropocentrism. Are we doing this for us or are we doing this for them? I'm not doing this for us. I think there will be positive consequences in making cetacean personhood a legal reality, don't get me wrong, for humans, but in the end, it's about fucking whales. I mean, isn't this the real moral empathy, human blah blah? The recognition of we're doing this for the other because it is the other. I mean, whatever. This could be debated, I could be wrong on that, but I think I'll stop there. Tomorrow we will go toward the device and make a Marino video and whatnot. So, you know what? Bye. We'll see. We will see each other tomorrow, hopefully.